Now for my attendance record implementation, I'll go up here to the start. So this is going to look similar to other assignments that we've had, and that we've got this public static final variable setting essentially the maximum size of our array. So we know that the assignment says we can only have 30 total records. So that's what this variable is going to keep track of. And that variable is used right here inside of our main to create the size of the array. So we have this array of records here, and it's going to be of size 30. Now you notice that our main is very, very small. All it does is it continuously prompts the user for the main menu, and until they've chosen to exit the program, it'll just loop on this forever. And that's all that main does. So all of the rest of the work will be in these other functions. So if we go look at main menu here is, it's going to accept this array of attendance records and call it R. And then it's going to print out this message. So this is basically the main menu that it's printing. And then it's going to continuously loop through the menu, asking the user to decide what they want to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And as long as they enter in a correct number, then it will call the appropriate function. Otherwise, it will just continuously loop and tell them to enter a number between 1 and 6. So we can see here that basically we're telling the user to enter a number, and then based on what they pick, we're calling these functions: create attendance record, remove attendance record, increment all records, display attendance record, and that's basically it. So that's all the main menu does. All it's basically doing is it's collecting one of these choices, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 really, and then it's calling the appropriate function. So let's look at this first one, create attendance record. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a quick check to see how many records there are. And we want to make sure that we don't allow the user to create more than the maximum number allowed. So because the maximum number is 30, if they've already got 30, this checks to see, hey, if you're trying to create a 31st record, then it will throw this error. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have our standard Boolean do while try catch structure that we've seen throughout the course. And here we're going to prompt the user to put in a name. Okay, so that's what this first structure right here is, a loop to ask for the user's name. Then we're going to have a very similar structure here to ask for the student's G number. Okay, and then once we have both the name and the G number, we are going to attempt to create a new attendance record, okay, using the name and number constructor, and we're going to stick that into the slot of the array that's at the number of attendance records we currently have. So before we actually create this record, when we first do this, we'll have the number of attendance records will be 0 when we execute this line up here. And so because that's 0, then that'll mean when we execute this line down here, it'll be R sub 0 equals, and then we'll do the new attendance record. And now when we create this new attendance record, that the constructor here will increment the number to 1. So the next time we create an attendance record, num attendance records will be 1. And so it'll be R sub 1 equals new attendance record. So that's all the create record does. Okay, so this is the remove record. And now we're doing a check at the beginning. We're making sure that if we currently don't have any records, then we're going to just go ahead and throw an exception and say, hey, you can't do that. We haven't created any records. Okay. And now we are going to give the user a menu of all of the records that are currently in the system. So that's what this get numbered list of attendance records function is. This is a function that just prints out a numbered list of all of the records. So let me skip down to that really quick. That is right here. Okay. And you'll notice in the comment it says I use this helper method to display all the records as a numbered list. And so this will allow the user to choose one of them. So basically all this is doing is I'm looping through the records and I'm printing out this I plus 1. Because my array is 0 based, I'm going to say, well, record 1 is something, record 2, instead of saying that record 0 is something, okay? And so it's just going to print out all of the records and return that as a string, okay? So if I go back to where I use this get numbered list of attendance records, that's back up here, okay? And I'm going to print out this message that shows a list of all of the attendance records. You know, it might help if let me just run the program really quick so you can see what this looks like. Okay, so if I create an attendance record, Brooke, and I do G1111111, then I'm going to create another one called Fred, and I'll have G22222222. Okay, now if I display all of my records, see how it displays this list? Record 1 is Brooke, record 2 is Fred, okay? But also, if I decide I want to remove an attendance record, like if I type in number 2, okay? This get numbered list of attendance records, that's what's generating this message right here. So it's saying, enter the number you wish to remove, 1 to 2, and then it's displaying all of these records. So that's what this function right here is doing, is it's displaying this information right here, okay? So let me just go back here. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them an infinite loop where I'm telling them to pick one of the records, okay? So in this case, there were 2 records. They have to either type in 1 or 2. And then once I have satisfactorily chosen one of the records, then I do my array. Ooh, having problems scrolling today. Let's see. Okay, so we're here in remove attendance record. So once I've gotten the record that they want to delete, then that's where I do my array shifting. So the choice is whatever it is the user types in. So if they say, I want to remove record number 5, they would type in 5, and that's what choice would be set to. And so if they say they want record 5, really what they're saying is I want the 4th position in the array, because the arrays are 0 based. So record 5 would be the same thing as array sub 4. So that's why here I start at that position. So in the example I just used, if choice was 5, then I would start at 4, and I'd go all the way up until the end of the array minus the last record, and all I'm doing is I'm moving the record up ahead to the previous record. So that's what this R sub I equals R sub I plus 1 is. I would, if you don't really understand what's going on with this array shifting, we had lectures where we talked about deleting things out of an array, and there's notes in the slides that talk about that. And so then when we get to the very last record, we're going to just go ahead and set that to null, because since we've shifted everything up 1, whatever's at the very end should be set to null. And then because I've now removed one of my records, I have one less attendance record, and that's where I need to call this decrease num records. And that basically takes that static variable inside attendance record and subtracts 1 from it. So that's the delete function, and I'm having scrolling issues again. Okay, so now here is the increment record. So again, I've got to check at the beginning to make sure that there's at least one record. If there's no records, then I get this error saying that I can't increment it. Again, I'm asking the user to put in the number of the record they want to increment, and I'm printing out that menu again. That's what this line is just like in the last method. Okay, and then I'm going through and I'm collecting the choice. Again, this code is exactly the same as in the last thing, where I'm telling the user to select the record that they want. The difference comes right here is after I've got the choice, then I go to that spot in the array, and then I call the increment days attended method from that particular record. So this line right here is, these 3 lines are the critical thing. And if I've succeeded in doing that without throwing any kind of exceptions, then I can go ahead and set this Boolean to done to exit out of this loop. Okay, so that's the increment days attended. Now for the increment all records, the way that I decided to do this was I decided to, well, first of all, I'm going to check to make sure that there are some records to increment. So the same check that I did up above. If there are no records, then throw an error and say, hey, there's nothing to increment. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through all the records and make sure that none of them will throw an error. So in other words, if I have, let's say that I have 5 records, 5 different attendance records. If one of the people in there has already attended 35 days, if I try to increment all of the records, then the person who has 35 days already will throw an error and the other ones won't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you can either increment all of them or I'm not going to allow you to do it at all. So this check right here basically is going to loop through all the records. It's going to get the days attended for each record, and then it's going to say, hey, if that is greater than the maximum, then I'm going to set this Boolean problem to true. In other words, if any one of them exceeds 35 days, then problem's going to be true. And then if I have a problem, then I'm going to just throw an exception and I'm not going to do anything else. Okay. Now, if there aren't any problems, so in other words, if I loop through all of these and problem never got set to true, so there weren't any problems, then that means that all of them are able to be incremented. And so then I'm just going to loop through them, and I'm going to call that increment days attended method at each step through the loop. So that's what that is. And my last method is to display the attendance records. So again, I do the check to make sure that there are actually records to display. And if there are records to if there are no records to display, then I display this. Then I show this error message. And if there are records to display, again, I just use my get numbered list of attendance records, because all that does is just print out the list of records. And so this will show all of them. Okay, so yeah, so that's basically it. So let me all right, so here we are at our program. We currently have one record, Brooke, so I'm going to add in another. We'll add in Bob. It'll be G33333333. We'll do, okay, so you see that I have Brooke and Bob. Okay, I'll add in one more. I'll add in Larry, G66666666. Okay, so you see that we have Brooke, Bob, and Larry. Okay, now I'm going to increment the record for Brooke. I'm going to increment the record for Brooke again. And I'm going to increment the record for Larry. Okay, and now if I display the records, you'll see that Brooke has 2 days. Larry's got 1. Okay, if I increment all the records, okay, then when I display them, you see now Brooke has 3, Bob has 1, Larry has 2. Okay, if I do that again, then you see that we have 4, 2, and 3. Okay. So that's basically the program. Again, if you have any questions about the program, feel free to email me or post a message on the discussion forums.